Welcome to Maritime, Pakistan, your gateway to the fascinating world of oceans and the opportunities they present to every one of us. Today's video explores naval warfare through the book Fleet Tactics and Coastal Combat. We're going to be diving into the 10th chapter, The Great Variables. Okay, let's get right into it.
You know, Napoleon made such a powerful point way back in 1812. He totally understood that if winning a war was as simple as just reading a book, well, every military theory out there would be a top-secret document, right?
And that quote really gets to the absolute heart of what we're talking about today. See, theory, on its own, doesn't win battles. It's all about those great variables, time, place, policy, that a commander has to truly get a handle on to even have a shot at victory.
I want you to think of it kind of like a funnel. At the widest part, the most abstract and faraway end, you've got theory. But as you get closer and closer to an actual conflict, things start to get a lot clearer, through peacetime prep and wartime experience. But it's only right at that moment of battle, at the very tip of the funnel, that those final, decisive variables really show themselves.
So as that battle gets closer, two things snap into sharp focus for a commander. What's the mission, and what forces do I have to pull it off? Let's start with the mission.
The mission, it's handed down from a superior, and for a commander, it can feel like a tyrant. It dictates everything. But here's the thing, how that commander interprets the mission can literally change history. The military theorist Clausewitz had this fantastic analogy for it. Your grand strategy is the master, sure, but it's totally useless if your tactical forces, the dog in the hunt, aren't the right tool for the job.
A classic example from World War II just highlights this perfectly. On one hand, you have Admiral Spruance. His mission was to defend the beachheads. He stuck to that mission like glue, even when he got slammed for not chasing down the enemy. On the other hand, you have Admiral Halsey. His mission was to destroy the enemy fleet, and boy did he pursue that so single-mindedly that he almost left his landing forces completely high and dry. Two commanders, two different interpretations, and two wildly different outcomes.
So you see, even a really clear mission can create all this friction and these super difficult choices. And those choices, they get even more complicated depending on the intensity of the conflict itself.
A commander's actions are also shaped by the scale of the war. For the last 50 years or so, the day-to-day job for many navies has been all about crisis containment. We're talking about putting out small fires before they can explode into these massive infernos.
Now, you might think that with the Cold War ending, things would have slowed down a bit. But what's really interesting is that the data shows the complete opposite. The rate of crisis response for the U.S. Navy nearly doubled in the early 90s. And get this, it happened while the fleet itself was shrinking by 40%. The operational tempo just went through the roof.
This constant state of readiness creates a huge problem. How do you train for these small, everyday house fires while also making sure you're ready for a massive, all-out war? This challenge is even tougher when you're not the world's biggest naval power. So what happens when you're the underdog?
Well, when you're outmatched, a direct head-to-head battle is basically a recipe for disaster. So history shows us there are about 5 main strategies for a smaller force. You could be a fleet in being. Just existing as a threat ties up enemy ships. You can try to whittle down the enemy in smaller fights. You can take a big, calculated risk like the Americans did at Midway. You could fight for local superiority in one key area. Or you can focus on sea denial, using things like subs and mines to make huge chunks of the ocean a no-go zone for the enemy.
Okay, so we've looked at the mission, the intensity, and the strategy. But how does a commander actually sit down and measure their real chances of success before a single shot is fired?
This is not just about counting up your ships and planes. There's this term, correlation of forces, which is really a deep assessment of everything, the tangible stuff and the intangible stuff, that decides who wins and who loses. Let's break down the key parts of this whole equation. First up is leadership. And this means being brutally objective, not just about your own skills, but about really understanding the enemy commander's habits and style. Wellington knew Napoleon was an aggressive attacker, and he used that knowledge to build his entire defensive trap at Waterloo.
Next, you've got the human factors. And this is so critical. Morale and training are always relative. What really matters is how your crew's readiness stacks up against the enemies on the day of the battle. The question isn't just, are we ready? The real question is, are we more ready than they are?
Then, of course, there's the hardware. And this goes way beyond a simple order of battle. It's about the actual real-world condition of your equipment.
A ship that has to fight with one of its main gun turrets knocked out has a completely different combat value, no matter what it says on paper.
A commander also has to be obsessed with combat endurance. How long can your forces actually keep fighting before they're out of gas and out of ammo? Forgetting this can be absolutely disastrous. The American carrier USS Wasp missed the entire Battle of the Eastern Solomons simply because it was sent to refuel at exactly the wrong moment.
And this leads us right to the next factor: resilience. What's your fleet's ability to take a punch, make repairs, and get back in the fight? Because, let's be honest, the absolute worst time to start planning for battle damage is after it's already happened.
And finally, there's the environment itself. Being close to land, the weather, the ocean conditions, all of these can totally change the tactical game, especially in coastal waters where geography is a huge player.
So how does a commander take this incredibly complex, messy mosaic of variables, leadership, morale, hardware, endurance, resilience, the environment, and somehow turn it all into a winning plan?
The final step is what we call synthesis. A truly great commander takes all these complicated inputs and just boils them down to their absolute essence. What you get is a plan that looks deceptively simple, it's cohesive, and it's flexible enough to allow for quick changes when the chaos of battle hits.
You see, mastering these great variables is a timeless art. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question for today's naval leaders. In an age of drones and artificial intelligence, how do you weigh those timeless human variables of leadership and morale against the cold, hard, data-driven analysis of a machine? We hope that you liked today's video. Post your questions in the comments section for future videos.